Hey, good afternoon. First, I apologize for being slightly late. I was setting up. Okay, so today I'm going to be sharing tips with mid to senior level professionals who are looking to go for executive level interviews. It takes a slightly different perspective. And so I have come up with these tips, both, I mean, from my experience and from other executive recruiters I've spoken to. You're going to find these very useful, and I've tried to make them practical. But before I go into the meat of the story, let me run the intro. Okay, so let's start with these tips. But before I do that, let me introduce myself. If we haven't met, my name is Ladi Gia. I help mid to senior level professionals land high paying dream jobs using structured and proven job search techniques without having to go through a tedious struggle in terms of job search. That's what I do in a nutshell. All right. So today I am going to be sharing tips. Let me dive in very quickly. Tip number one: be responsive. All right. So um, the one thing that we've observed in interacting with the executives across levels, right, especially in terms of trying to, hire them, is responsiveness is a clear differentiator between the executives who actually perform and those who don't. Now, because you're senior, yes, we understand that you're really busy, but I have found, and a few other executive recruiters have reaffirmed to me, confirmed with me, that the people who, when you call them, they pick. When they say they will return, your call, they return your call. When you send an email, they respond immediately. Those are the people who are likely to be more effective. Sadly, it shows up a lot during the interview process when you're constantly chasing people. They say they will call, they don't call back. It's important as an executive, to determined to differentiate yourself, right, by being responsive. Another thing that comes up prior to the interview proper is, take time to do the paperwork. I know that you have paid your dues, and a lot of people come into the process with, well, I've paid my dues, I know what I bring. True, but everybody else we are speaking to has also paid their dues. You have to look to what are those things that differentiate me. So when we send you paperwork, please do it and do it promptly. If there's an assessment as a part of it, and you've agreed to go through the process, go ahead and do that. We know you've paid your dues, right? But there's a reason why the paperwork is there. Please do the paperwork. Differentiate yourself by doing what needs to be done promptly. A third one, and then I'll move on very quickly, is as the process goes through, the recruiter who's contacting you, whether an internal recruiter or an external recruiter, may not be at your level. Person may be junior, may be your peer, right? It's important not to be condescending, right? Because after all, a real mark of leadership, right, is the ability to engage with people at all levels respectfully. Yes, so it's important, and it doesn't matter from the gate man when you arrive there to this receptionist. Every single person, is part of the impression that you are giving, or that you are forming at your target employer. So please try not to be condescending. Set your ego aside as you're going through the process. You will find that if you engage with everyone as a pair, right, and meaningfully, respectfully, you will be able to gain insights that others may not necessarily have access to. Okay, so let me move to number two. Number two, which is kind of related to my first point, is you need to show that you take it seriously. I know that it seems obvious, but I can't tell you the number of interview rounds that we've had, right? even with senior people, where the candidate comes across as though, they didn't take the time to properly prepare. It's not a good look at all, and it's unforgivable at senior level. So go beyond the I know my role, go beyond the I know this role, even though that's very important. Even go beyond the I've looked at your website. Actually research. I say this all the time. Research is your secret weapon. So just think about it. You are applying to be hired into a very important position within an organization, right? It's important to demonstrate that you've taken the time to get to know them in depth. You understand their industry, you understand their own specific business, you know the competition, you know their customers, you even have some insight as to how their employees, who their employees are, the culture, who has worked there before. You must be able to give um okay so you must be able to demonstrate to them not only that you know it, but even your process of researching them will give you a lot of insights to be able to then shape your own responses that will then make you more effective as you engage with them. You must show that you take it seriously. um Sometime, was it last month or so, I was part of a selection process for a set of senior candidates. They were hiring into a regional leadership role at an organization. Of course, I mean, you know that at this point everyone is an expert, has experience. So let's say there's a level playing field. Everybody met the requirements for experience, for even accomplishments. Talking to them one on one, the thing that stood out, the thing that really made the difference, in terms of how the candidates came across, was the ones who had made the effort not just to know the general, but to know specifically current organizational situation, why they might have been looking for that role, what was important going on, right, for that organization in that region. And they were able to you know then use that knowledge that they had to then situate themselves more accurately within performance on the role. So take it seriously and be ready, be prepared to show that you took it seriously, and in doing that you'll be able to differentiate yourself, right? So not only must you understand the key issues, as I said, about the landscape, the company itself, the customers, the employer brand, their culture, and their challenges. But you must also know what are the priorities on their mind, on the mind of the leadership. But beyond that, what's your opinion of what they're doing in the marketplace as an example, right? Take it seriously. But there's a counterbalance to that. Take it seriously, but then again, don't come across as desperate. I know it seems like a so yes, I respect you. I value this opportunity. I valued it enough to take the time, right, to study you in depth, right? But it's not I will die if I don't get this role. There's a balance somewhere in there that must be made. But take it seriously and be ready to show that you take it seriously. Let me move to the next tip. The next tip: work with the recruiter, internal or external. Your recruiter has to be your ally, right, in this process. In what ways can you work with the recruiter? Well, I've mentioned the issue of being responsive, don't be condescending, but more importantly, they've been briefed, right, to hire this position. So you need to get as much information as you can about the organization, about the role, about the context and the dynamics from your recruiter. In fact, I would go further to say request pre interview preparation with your recruiter. Most recruiters worth their salt make the effort to properly prepare candidates before they put them in front of the organization. If they don't offer, prompt them, right? Prepare them. I mean, ask them to prep you. They will have intelligence that you don't have on the client situation. They should be able to give you full context, and they should be able to help you prepare. Work with your recruiter. All right, so let's go to the next point, number 4. Oops, no, I didn't want to do this. Let me go to the next one. I'll come back to assess the question behind the questions. Yeah, number 5, be clear about your why. Think about it. Almost every leader that you've encountered who's inspiring, right? They can very quickly tell you why they do what they do, why they're the best, at what they do, why the organization is doing or going to where they're going. Essentially, what I'm saying to you is you yourself must be able to clearly and quickly, right? Tell them what drives you, because that's what they want to know. So you must be able to demonstrate what your intrinsic motivation is. Where are you going? Why do you do the things you do? Why the organization? Very important question you must consider and settle in your mind, and be ready to communicate clearly, crisply, right? Why are you the best fit? Why this specific opportunity? Be clear about your whys, right? And practice your answers. You must be able to answer this quickly, without rambling, in a way that is impactful, that makes um sense. Okay, let me go to the next very important tip: minimize risk. I've always said it that on the part of the candidate, for them, a lot of the time, the biggest driver is time. They want to get hired quickly. On the part of the hiring organization, their biggest driver is risk, right? The cost of making a wrong hire is too great for any organization to just approach it casually. In everything that they do around the recruitment process, what they're trying to prevent is hiring the wrong person. If you have that understanding in mind, what you then do is you work to help them proactively minimize the risk, and show them how the risk of hiring you is minimal. Okay, you want to show that you're the least risky candidate to hire. I want to say it, I can't overstate it. The person who gets hired is not necessarily the best candidate. It's not necessarily the most brilliant or the most charismatic. It's typically the least risky. We need to hire someone who not only can do the job, but will fit with our organization and will do what needs to be done. We can't afford, especially at leadership level, we can't afford to get it wrong. How do you minimize this risk? Standard thing, I'm sure you know already, but I'll say it again. Know your metrics. It's not, first of all, the interview is not about you. It's really about the employer, what they need, and how you meet those needs, right? And in speaking to how you meet those needs, you must come at it with numbers, accomplishments. It's not a long story of first I worked here, then I worked there. No, it's what have I achieved, in what tangible, objectively verifiable ways have I made an impact in this area that you're trying to achieve. So speak to your accomplishments, role specific, right? But more importantly, organization wide metrics. So in your current role, in your previous roles, you made an impact, but you have to be able to show your impact, how it improved things for the organization, because at your level is no longer about your specific function only, it's about organizational impact. The other big area of risk is fit, and this of course is the also, I would say, is the place that is most open to individual interpretation, right? When it comes to making a decision on the part of the hiring manager. For most other areas, you can say it's there, it's not there, very quickly. But for fit, it's perception, right? And so how do you show that you fit? Of course, what are you trying to fit into? The culture, how they do things around there, their mission, right? You are a leader who is going to be responsible for leading other people. So you have to. And how do you do that? You must understand what their culture is. What does it mean? And in going into the interview conversation, embody it in highlighting your experience and accomplishments. Pick those things that reflect it. Um, One good trick I normally advise people to do, aside from the standard, oh, look at their careers page, how do they describe themselves? Talk to people who work there. How do they describe working there and who succeeds there? Who are the other executives? Research them properly. How do they come across? Find out what their culture is. What leadership style works there, right? And be prepared to go into the interview embodying that. Fit is very, very important. Also closely tied to it. So you must show not only that you understand their culture, you would fit there, but that the culture speaks to you, that where they're going, their vision and their culture speaks to you. You're passionate about it. It's important to you. That's where you want to go, right? So it's about them essentially. Okay. Now, before I move on from this minimizing risk, in preparing to engage your interviewers, your question is, I mean, let's even talk about what does a leader look like. Leaders, have clear sight. They're clear sighted, right? They know they understand direction. They not only understand, but they're able to give direction. So they can see where things are going, they can communicate quickly, but very importantly, they include other people, they carry people along, and they're able to engage and inspire people, right? So you know that when you're going into that interview, you're going in embodying, yourself as a leader. So you're going there to inspire, to connect, to engage, right? You have to be able to demonstrate that you're inclusive. Okay. How do you do that? Well, I mean, I spoke to you about the whole process. Of course, by the time you're meeting the chief executive or the more senior level of people, it's at least your second interview. It's useful to, if you've spoken to other people in the organization before you got to this point, as you're giving your examples, refer to ideas those people had or responses those people gave, right, in the course of the earlier interviews, and build on them. What that shows is that you're someone who listens, and who listens to people, at all levels, and are able to take their ideas, synthesize them, and use them to come up with, solid answers. In giving your examples, also speak to how you've carried people along, in what way members of your team and your colleagues, have contributed to your successes or your approach to doing things, right? So you must embody leadership as you're having the conversation. All right. So the next one I think we should talk about is, okay, let me go to strategy first. Be strategic. I know it seems obvious, but again, because we interview people at the executive level from time to time, um, I know, right, that sometimes people forget and get stuck in the tactical, in the, oh, I'm so great at my role. Look at my technical prowess. By the time you're stepping up to leadership, yes, we take it as a given, right, that you're technically competent. But a leader's role is around leadership competence, not technical competence. You need technical competence to be able to give direction, to be able to give feedback, to be able to guide performance. But the real value that you bring is in being able to lead people, or technically competent people, to achieve those goals, right? Therefore, you must be able to see things big picture and then drive down to detail. So, in all your answers, in all your scenarios, you must start from industry, organization, then the function. Just think about it like that, right? Like an inverted pyramid. Was happening in the market, was happening, with us specifically, and that's where you would dwell a lot. And then function specific. In the course of the interview, if you find yourself spending time a lot, right, on the tactical, that interview is not going as well as you think it is, right? Um, Of course, you will know the details of your role, they're important, but it's more about the organization. Focus on the company, right? And the impact of the actions taken by your target role on organizational um, objectives. You also have to be able to show that you understand how everything fits together. If my favorite example, because I'm coming from HR, if you're in HR, you shouldn't go in there speaking from I'm HR. You should go in there speaking from where the organization, and here's how HR fits. I understand, the dynamics around sales, around operations, and therefore, because I understand, because that is what, say, that HR role is, for instance. Therefore, because I understand this, HR needs to be this way to be able to meet the organizational goals. You must know the business, you must know how it fits together. So think company, not role. Let me move quickly to the next one. Equally important, shift perspectives. So going into an interview, I'm sure you're familiar with we tend to use behavioral questions. So essentially, remember I said risk, right? And one of the biggest ways to minimize risk is to bring evidence before them that you've done in the past what they are looking to have done, right? And so they would tend to ask you questions. You've heard the behavioral questions: situation, task, your storytelling, situation, task, action, result, or challenge, action, result, whichever format you want to use. A lot of the questions will be behavioral questions seeking to say, tell us about a time, for instance, when you've done or when you've done this. So answer those questions. Is important to show evidence, but just as quickly move to helping them see you, right, in the role in the future. Let me try and clarify a bit. Okay, so you talking about the future is like a very great way. What you're doing to capture their imagination so that they're not looking at this is a candidate and evaluating, can he do it, or can she do it, or can she not, what has she done in the past that tells us that she can do it. Cover that quickly, then just take them to, as the interviewer is sitting down there, let them be able to see you in the role, how you might do in the role. Move them from evaluating your past, right, to seeing the future with you um, in it. All right. So an example would be, if you're answering a question of, tell me how you did some specific thing in the past. Of course, you answer that question. Well, this was the situation. This was you answer it, and then you say, now bringing it into your context. I have observed that here's how I might approach, doing it if I worked here. That's one way. Another way is to even ask them to give you a scenario in their current context, right? So that you can talk to them how you would solve a similar thing within their organization. Always try and make sure it's a 50-50 split. 50% demonstrating your evidence and accomplishments from the past, 50% looking into the future. Never answer the question of, tell us how you do something in the past with just that answer. Always pivot to, and now if we were to bring it to your organization, here's how I would do it. Future facing as much as possible. Okay, so let me move to the next one. We're almost at the end. This one, very big. Use your questions. I know you'd have heard, oh, well, be prepared to ask them good questions when you go in. True. But as a leader, it's a little more than just be prepared to ask them good questions. First of all, and I say this to everyone, whether you're mid-level or senior level, don't wait until the end. See, the interview is a conversation, right? If you see it as a conversation between peers, right, to try and solve a common problem, then you'll be able to engage them more effectively. Don't wait till the end. From the very beginning, when you have the opportunity, ask them to define what success looks like in that role. Very important. If not, you don't have a framework, right, with which to organize and situate your answers, right? That picture of success should be what then determines everything else you will tell them. So your opening question must always be, what does success look like in this role? Now, you should make them paint this picture of success for you. If they cannot paint it, then there is a challenge, right? Then it now becomes an exploratory. Well, if you haven't thought about it before, well, what would it look like? So you're then co-creating. But the preferable situation is where they're able to answer you, well, it looks like this and this and this. And the picture of success essentially would be, what are the 3 to 4 major goals that this person must accomplish in the first 6 months to 1 year of being in this position. By 1 year, the person should have done 1, 2, 3 tangible things. So then you take those tangible things and tailor your answers towards showing how you would deliver those things. So that's the first thing I'll tell you about questions. The other thing that I'll tell you about questions is, don't ask them questions that have closed answers. For instance, what's your I'm trying to come up with one. What's your financial goal this year? And they say $100 billion as an example. Full stop. That isn't helpful. See, questioning, right? One of the biggest skills leaders have is questioning. Leaders are able to use questions, right, to get in-depth understanding of a situation, of a context, so that they can get intelligence to make effective decisions. Remember, this interview is about assessing you in a leadership role. Therefore, you kind of use your questions to demonstrate that. So you ask them questions that challenge them, questions about their strategic direction, or their products, or their market situation, or about even their people, whatever it is, something you're intensely interested in, something that you can drive a conversation with, right? So be prepared not only to ask the question, but to use follow up questions to dig deeper, to get to know them well, right? And as I said, what you're doing is you're showing, as a leader, I know how to gather intelligence, right? To question effectively, to get the information I need. One last thing before I move on from questions. In answering questions, and because you're selling yourself, it's tempting to say, well, when I get in here, I'm going to drive down cost by 10%. That would be the wrong thing to do. Never promise an improvement, right, to the interviewer in answer to a question. What you should do is show them your input. How would you? So you're not promising that the cost will go down. So let me frame it properly. Let's say we are talking about, how would you help us? We're struggling with skyrocketing employee costs. How would you help? Would you be able to help us drive that down? The answer is not yes. It's not yes. I can drive it down by 10% at least, right? The answer is, would you be able to? Yes, right? I have done it in the past, and then you go ahead and share the situation in which you have done it in the past. Step one. Step two, coming to your organization. Here are 1, 2, 3, 4 measures that I would take, right, in order to see how these have been proven, by myself and also in the industry, in order to drive it down. So you're not promising a specific improvement, you are showing them that you know how to get that improvement done. Okay. All right. So let me move on to the next one. Just a minute, please. Let me call it up. All right. So number 10, it's not about the money yet, right? When I say it's not about money, I'm not speaking to the organization. Of course, to the organization is always, you have to have a firm grasp of the money and the financials. I mean, that's why everybody is in business, right? No, when I'm talking about your personal, it's not the time to start asking for the salary, essentially. And yes, the salary thing will come up, but from a leadership perspective, the more important thing is demonstrating to them, right, that you can do the job, you will do the job, and you are the right fit. So typically, I say to my candidates, deflect the compensation question until after you are satisfied, right? That um, we can, until after you're satisfied that they can see you in that role and that you've made a meaningful connection. The time for that money conversation will come. When that time comes, right, you should go into the conversation knowing what the industry, what the market rate, what your market rate is, at least being very clear on what it is that you want, right, and knowing your tactic for negotiation. But your interview is not the place to have that conversation. Okay, so I mean, I've run through 10 tips, right, and there are quite a few more. Of course, I mean, in one episode we can't cover every single tips, but these are some that are fundamental to your being able to, differentiate yourself at an executive level interview. Oh, one last one. We've talked a lot about what will you say, but your non-verbal communication, right, and your ability to build and hold rapport and engagement with non-verbal, with your non-verbal, is just as important, right, as what you say. So you have to look to that. Things like eye contact, things like using, your body, right, to buttress your points. Like I'm moving my hands now. Your standard non-verbal communication skills, brush up on those. And one last thing I would also say is practice. I cannot overestimate, right, how important it is to practice with your recruiter, practice with your coach if you have one, practice in front of your mirror, record yourself answering these questions. You'd be amazed at the types of improvements that you can bring and the level of comfort, right, that you will have in entering into that confidential conversation. Remember, leaders are confident, right? So you want to walk in there not having to worry about how you're coming across because you've covered it up front. All right, so I'll stop there for this week. Now, if you found this useful, please give it a like. If you have questions, just respond, put your questions below this video. I will respond immediately. Of course, I won't leave without asking you to connect with me on LinkedIn, where you're looking at this page. Follow me, right? And also, I mean, this broadcast is on YouTube as well as on our page. So whatever page you are viewing this on, please like the page, please follow, yes, and engage. Also visit our website www.mycareerdrive.com. So in terms of what I can do for you now, if you are at every stage of your job search, I can work with you, right, to find the most effective way to target, right, and get what it is that you're looking for. In terms of getting focused, I can work with you to look at your experience, map the market, right, and pinpoint where the most promising opportunities are for you, right. In terms of getting visible, I work with my candidates to build, their personal brand. I do personal branding even for people who are not currently looking for work. But as a leader, you do have to consciously be building, cultivating your personal brand. So I walk you through strategy, prepare the communication tactics, and show you, work with you to create an execution plan to manage your personal brand in a way that attracts the people you want to attract, right? Then moving on to the stage of prepping your resume, preparing for your interview. Every step of the way, I can give you expert guidance, right, to get it done. And I do this just based on the fact of I've been on both sides. I've been a candidate many times at senior level. I've changed career at senior level at least 3 times, right? So I've been candidate, and I understand those tactics. But also I've been recruiting for what, 13 plus years across levels, right? So I can tell you from the point of view of the recruiter, from the point of the view of the business, right? What works and what doesn't work. All right. So whether you're currently going through a job search or you're just thinking, well, I'm curious, what are my options really? What direction should I be going in? Please reach out, right? We can have, I offer a free strategy, a free discovery call, right? So right there on my profile, my Calendly link is there. Book a spot. Let's have a talk. Let's see how I can support you. All right. So I'm back again next week, same time with more tips. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.